So first, thank you to everyone who's joining us today, both the folks from DNR as well as our communities across the state. A big thank you as well. This is our first event since our mid-year conference. We had over 600 folks join us for that. So a big thank you to everyone who was able to join us down in St. George. When we were in St. George, we had a workshop on water in the general plan, requirement coming up for communities this year. There's also a requirement for this water infrastructure planning and conservation to have projects in the portal by May 9th. So we just wanted to take a moment to connect with some of our friends at DNR, talk about the water infrastructure planning conservation that we're looking at this upcoming year, and just have a moment to have them share their expertise, answer your questions. Just so you know, we're anticipating that they'll present for about the first 45 minutes, and then after that, we'll do about 15 minutes of Q&A. You're welcome to enter your questions in the chat, or there's also a Q&A box. I will say the Q&A is a little easier for us to track what's been answered and what hasn't. So definite preference on the back end for that if you can use it, but I know that's a little tricky for some folks as well. So as always, feel free to enter something in the chat if you need it. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn the time. I'm not sure who's kicking it off, Keith or Candace, but I'll go ahead and kick it off to you two. And thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks, Molly. I'm super excited to be here with all of you today virtually to talk about some of the ongoings. My name is Candace Hossenjager. I'm the director here at the Division of Water Resources, which is housed within the Department of Natural Resources. And just a little bit of background, maybe let's go to the next slide, Keith. In 2024, there was a pretty significant bill that was passed which was House Bill 280. It did a lot of things, but big picture, what it's trying to get at is how do we handle this aging infrastructure problem that we have, as well as less money being available on our federal partners side of the equation. And how do we handle figuring out how much state money we need? Just to put that into context just a little bit, there's an estimated $38 billion need for drinking water infrastructure by 2060. If we look at our water quality needs, that's another $15 billion. And if we look at our irrigation canal company level, that's another $6 billion. So we have a huge significant need as our infrastructure, not only for repair and replacement, but as well new infrastructure for new people moving in. And so that was kind of this big overarching goal that HB 280 is trying to tackle. One of the important things it did is it did create a new fund, which is called the Water Infrastructure Fund. At this point, there is not a lot of money in there. They put some seed money in there of $2.5 million, but there are still some things that we're working on to figure out how to get additional money for that. But the other big piece it did was requiring what they called the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan be created. And this is really just a list of projects that have been ranked and prioritized from what we need today to tomorrow and 20 years out. And so it's really trying to get at this. It also required us to do a couple of different studies, including the integration of existing funds. And so that was looking at how are all the existing funds that we currently have in the state. We get a sales tax portion that goes to fund water infrastructure. How do those all work and how will they work in this new process? We completed that study in October of last year, and then there was some legislation to implement some of those changes or some of the recommendations to that. And the other piece that we're investigating right now is what are ways can we implement to get additional funding for water infrastructure in the state. And one of the ideas, and there's a study ongoing, is to require some sort of fee. So that is an ongoing piece as well. Next slide. So this is just kind of the big picture timeline. The bill was signed into law May 1st of 2024. In October 1st, we did our first status of funds for all of the relevant agencies that are involved in that. We completed the integration of existing funds in October of last year. And right now is when we're developing these relevant agency plans that'll fit into that Unified Water Infrastructure Plan. And then if we look ahead, we'll have the fee study out this October. And then next year is when we're looking to have a finalized unified water infrastructure plan. And that's also when we need to put into process that if an entity wants state funding, that they have to be on this list. So this is our first go round of trying to get all of your projects on our list. So next slide, and then I'll introduce Keith Larson. He's principal at Bowen and Collins, and is the consultant that we hired to help us lead up this project. Keith, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, thank you, Candace. Appreciate it. Bowen Collins and Brown & Caldwell are working together on one of the components that Candace identified. You have the integration of fund study that was completed previously. You have the fee study that Zions is working on, and then what we've been tasked with specifically is the UWIP, or Unified Water Infrastructure Plan. And so I'm going to focus on this part of the plan, or part of the study. I guess I just emphasized for everybody that we'll do the best that we can to answer questions on the program as a whole, but understand that there's these three different components that have gone and are going on moving forward. So what we've been tasked with specifically is to help the state understand what the water infrastructure needs are within the state. And so to do that, we've been asked to organize project needs in phases up to a 20-year plan, basically breaking into various phases of when funding will be needed. And then from there, we're going to work with each of the agencies to understand and identify what their project priorities are and make sure that those align with the state water plan policies, goals, and recommendations. So we bring all these projects together that could potentially need state funding into one comprehensive plan. So Candace highlighted this at the big picture, but I just wanted to reemphasize where we're at. And I know some of these timelines are a little bit difficult, especially for busy people like yourself who are trying to keep track of a number of different things. But this is kind of outlined by the legislature in terms of the dates that we needed to hit. So earlier this year, we've been working on public outreach and developing the workflow for this. On April 8th, we opened a project submission form, and that's what we'll spend a little time on, is just showing you how that works. That project submission form will be closed on May 9th, and that will kind of end the opportunity for you to get projects into the first round of consideration. One common question that we're getting is, well, will this be the only time that we can put projects on here? And the answer is no. We expect that there will be probably on an annual basis, there'll be opportunities to add, modify projects. But for this first effort, we're basically asking everybody to do their best to get what they know in by May 9th, so that we can assemble the most comprehensive plan we can. By the reason that May 9th is important is by June 30th, water resources, drinking water, and water quality all have a deadline to submit their full agency plans for projects to be included in the comprehensive UWIP. And then by March 1st of 2026, the Water Development Coordinating Council will come together to integrate those plans into the unified plan and adopt that as the funding plan for the state. Okay, so let's just talk about what can be included in the infrastructure plan. As defined by the legislation, eligible infrastructure types include agriculture off-farm, so individual farm improvements not included, but irrigation companies, canals, etc. Those can be eligible for potential funding consideration. Drinking water, reuse, secondary water, stormwater and flood control, wastewater, and then water supply, both on a watershed protection side of things and raw water source development. So the legislation is pretty comprehensive, that anything that really helps convey, treat water in the state is eligible for consideration. So this is just a little kind of a flow chart of how we see this progressing over time. We're working on the first step right now, which is for all entities to submit their projects, excuse me. They will be distributed to each of the relevant agencies, the 3 specific that we mentioned. The agencies will prioritize those projects within their agency and create an agency plan. As noted here, that is due on June 30th of this year. The Water Development Coordinating Council will then meet to coordinate the projects globally and report back to the legislature. At the same time, as mentioned, the funding study is coming along to identify potential funding sources that could be used to pay for projects in the plan. One thing that will be worked on as we try to resolve all this is trying to figure out what is the gap, what is the need between the projects that have been identified and the amount of funding that's available. And that's something that's being worked out. We don't really know yet how that's going to play out. That's the reason for these 2 studies. And I've had a lot of people talk to me about that a little bit. You know, how do we know what projects to put in if we don't know how much funding is available? And I understand it's a little bit, can be a little bit frustrating to try to figure that out, but there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing here. We need the best plan we can to be able to inform those that are doing the fee study, and the fee study will help us inform how projects get funded ultimately. So we're ultimately asking you to do your best to identify what your needs are so that we can get the best list we can to the agencies and to the Water Development Coordinating Council to create good planning for the state moving forward. Okay, couple of things just to note in terms of the outreach that has occurred already. We've created a UWIP website that we'll take a little look at. We've notified 2,200 entities from the different contact information that we have from each of the agencies. Includes social media posts and agency website updates, and then done public outreach at a number of different conferences that have occurred here in the last couple months. We've also worked with some consultants and some different districts and cities to develop our workflow a little bit. And as mentioned, we opened the database on April 8th with submittals due May 9th. So at the end of the day, here is the ask from each of you is to identify your projects that need funding, ideally within the next 20 years, specifically within the next few years are the most critical, but the better plan we have, the better we can plan, and put those into our database. This QR code will take you to the web page, but you can also just Google UWIP projects and you can get there. This is what the web page looks like at the top. And I think I may actually just go to the web page real quick. Oh, wrong one. So here's the web page itself. I would point out right here, a couple lines down is integration of existing funds study, where you can pull up the study that has been previously done to better understand what funds are being included. We have the timeline and some background. And down towards the bottom is an opportunity to add project information. And so if you click on that add project information, you'll be taken to this page. And I want to point out just a couple of important things here. First, this data field instructions. If you click on that link, you will have information on how to fill out the requested information on each of your projects. So that is very useful. And then next is the project data entry spreadsheet template. It's a mouthful there, but if you click on that, it will download. And I can go to that and open up the template here. Oh, and here it is right here. So there's two tabs, one providing a few basic instructions and then a project data entry form that contains the information that we're looking for. In the long term, we are hoping that we will have the opportunity to create more of a portal in which you can log in and see your projects and be able to update them. But given the timeline that we have, we're going to start out with just this Excel-based spreadsheet, get your information in. That will allow us to create the first plan and create the portal that will allow you to update this in the future. Okay, let me go back to presentation. Make sure I covered what we wanted to cover. So the add project info button at the bottom, important. Okay, ultimately you're going to come to the bottom and hit submit projects, and that's going to take you to a short Google database form. There's just a couple of questions and an area to upload your spreadsheet. And that's really all you need to do is answer those questions and then upload your spreadsheet. I'll go back to the web page here. Submit projects. You can see the two questions you need to answer are the name of your entity, and then you select the type of infrastructure being submitted. So if you have multiple types of infrastructure, we'd ask you to enter in one spreadsheet for each of those types of infrastructure. So a city might have a drinking water, a secondary water, a stormwater, and a wastewater, for example. You might have 4 different spreadsheets that you upload. We're asking you to do that so that we can make sure it gets the information gets to the right agency and we can organize it that way. You'll upload each of those, add the file, and then hit submit. And that's essentially the process for this first go around. If needed, we can go through some of these in more detail, but basically the questions focus on a couple different areas: what your project information is, what type of funding you're looking for, how the project impacts the public interest, and then what the need is. Also, public benefit is included in there and some information on project size. So as mentioned, we can review those in more detail as questions come up. Okay, so that's really, we're only 20 minutes into this. Candace has a few more pieces of information, but I thought it'd be useful to pause here and maybe allow some questions on the program and what thoughts you have. So Molly, do you want to? Let's see.
All right.
I can,
Can keep back up. So do we want to do questions about the program and then we can kick it over to Candace to discuss the other programs, or do you want to present everything and then take all the questions at once?
Candace, what's your preference?
Maybe it'd be helpful. There's just a few more things I was gonna share as far as water conservation. Maybe I'll hit those and then we can come back and we can do all the questions at once, if that sounds good.
That sounds
That
good.
sounds great.
Okay. Great. So just a couple other programs I wanted you all to be aware of, and maybe your city is already participating in these, but one of them is our landscape incentive program. And this is one I'm actually really excited about because it allows for your residents to be eligible to receive a landscape incentive to replace thirsty grasses with water-wise landscaping. And this program has been really successful. So in 2022 or 2023, we received 5 million one-time and 3 million ongoing. And so we were able to start this program where we're able to work with our partners in the districts and in the rest of the state to provide these incentives. And it's been wildly successful. 3 million square feet of grass has been replaced with water-wise landscaping. And we all know that water-wise landscaping uses about 2/3 less water. So it's a really great way to stretch your water resources and make us more resilient in drought, which is really great. And you can go to utahwatersavers.com to learn about them, or you could actually just go to slowtheflow.org is a good option too. Next slide. There is a requirement on your part coming from the cities. We and the districts require water efficiency standards to be adopted. These water efficiency standards do depend on what area you are in, but your city council has to adopt these water efficiency standards for new construction. Generally, they are things like no lawn in parking strips, and in new development, no lawn in areas less than 8 feet. There's usually some restriction on the amount of lawn in our front and side yards, depending on where you're at in the state. And then there are some efficiency standards for commercial, industrial, institutional, and multifamily homes. And I have residents who reach out to me and be like, I want to change out my lawn, but my city hasn't adopted these water efficiency standards. And all I can tell them is go to your city council and talk to them. Really, what this is trying to do is so we're not constantly chasing our tail. This is a really efficient way to use our water resources better, but it's also very expensive. And so to have for the state to pay money and districts to pay money to rip out grass and then have a new development putting in grass, we never feel like we're going to catch up. And so we've required these water efficiency standards be adopted. And I tell people I live in a city that hasn't adopted these yet, and I really want to change out my landscape, but it hasn't happened quite yet. So just something to consider. I have a great water conservation team that would be happy to talk with you or put you in touch with the right people if you're interested in your residents being eligible for these landscape incentives and your city council to adopt these water efficiency standards. Right now, about 72 locations have adopted standards, and residents are available to use those incentives, which is great. Next slide, please, Keith. We also have great rebates for water saving devices. If you have an older toilet, you can get a rebate, or smart controller. Those are great, and those are available for the whole state. No questions asked. There's a little bit of work you got to do to, submit the rebate, but it's a great option for that. Next slide. Then we also have some additional technical support and grants. One that is really great is transparent water billing. If you think of like your energy bill and you kind of see like, oh, this is how I compare to my neighbors, or a gas bill, this is really what we're trying to get with, is how can we better describe how people use water to the actual end user. And so this is a way that the state wants to help you do that. So we definitely reach out to us and I can put you in touch with the right people, but that's a great way to make our water users more educated about how they're using water. And then there's also a lot of opportunities for leak detection. We've also done 4 growing water smart workshops where we bring land use planners and water planners together. A lot of times historically they've been separate roles and responsibilities, but there's a really important integration of those 2 aspects because water will be challenging into the future. And so growing as smart as we can is really important. So those workshops we've done, like I said, we've done 4 of them, and we plan to host more, at least 1 more this year, and then a couple for next year. So those would be a great opportunity. We just closed a lot of our water conservation planning grants. We did a bunch there. Those are now closed, but if you guys need support, let me know. I'd be happy to try to get additional support in that way. And that's kind of that water for the general plan piece. And then one last thing, all water conservancy districts and what the legislature is lovingly called retail water providers, which really just means that you provide drinking water and have over 500 connections, that every 5 years you get the opportunity to submit a water conservation plan to the Division of Water Resources, and we help to review that and provide information. You'll get a letter from me saying, hey, it's time to update this plan, but it's a great way to kind of track your water conservation, where you're at today, where you want to be, to set goals. And yeah, it's really good that way as well for your planning needs. And I think, is there one more slide, or is that the last slide, Keith? Yeah, and then you can find us online. And yeah, you can reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions. So now I think we have saved plenty of time for questions, and it looks like there's a few.
Yeah, we have a handful. So we'll just start going through. I'm going to go through the Q&A questions first. So if you have a question in the chat, if you want to pop it in the Q&A box, that's great. If not, after, I'll pop over to the chat and kind of comb through and see what we've missed. So to start with, first question, if all goes as smoothly as possible, when will funding for the highest priority projects be available?
That's a good question. So depending on your project, there could be money available now in the form of a loan. If you're looking for grants, that will probably take another year or 2, depending on the time frame of getting additional appropriations for the funding.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question. What does the status of the project need to be? In essence, can it be a project that will start prior to this being finalized? Can that still be included?
Do you want me to take that one, Keith?
Sure.
So I can speak for the Board of Water Resources, and I'll just say the other kind of tricky element with this is we are trying to merge 3 different funding boards into this new process. So I can speak for the Board of Water Resources. We do require that at least the board has authorization before construction starts. So I would say if you are looking for funding, you can always apply to these boards right now. You don't have to wait. Like I said, most of the time it will be loan funding up until we get additional appropriations, but they're very favorable rates.
Well, the other question that I've gotten, Candace, is how does this affect applications that are already been submitted? And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is anything that's already in the queue, that will continue to go through the regular process. But moving forward, the UWIP will become the process for funding.
Yes, that is how we're we've been directed to do this. And I've also had lots of questions about what if there's an emergency, or what if my system's really small? There are a couple of little carve outs in HB 280 for those purposes. We're working through how would that look through a rulemaking process that we're embarking on, but that hasn't been completely defined. Once again, this process isn't changing till next year, next July, so a year and a few months from now. So stay the course, go through the process as it is, but start getting your projects into this project list so you're ready for when things change next year.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, are there any types of projects that are more likely to be funded than others or prioritized?
Go ahead, Keith.
I will say this is a work in process. We are working together to try to figure out how to prioritize, and part of the legislation is that the Water Development Coordinating Council will include some public meetings and a process in which people can contribute their ideas to how water and funding should be prioritized in the state.
I would also add that and I've kind of articulated this as I feel like we're building a ship as we're trying to get, or an airplane as we're trying to take off. So there will be a learning process. That being said, when we went through the integration of existing funds process, we did kind of set up those different project types so that we're not comparing an agricultural canal improvement project to a city water main project, right? We want to compare like projects. Not saying that there will still be challenges as we're trying to prioritize even within those, but we did try to think through this a little bit, and we are working on that prioritization process.
Thank you. Next question. Can we use this program to purchase water from canal companies?
No, this is only for water infrastructure projects.
Okay, thank you. What infrastructure type would a residential well monitoring project be in?
Well monitoring?
It says, yeah, residential well monitoring project.
What do you think, Keith?
But yeah, I was gonna say, if it's an individual residential well, correct me if I'm wrong, Candace, but I don't believe it would qualify under this program because it is not benefiting, basically more than one property. You have to be and this is where we've tripped up a little bit on a municipal type entity to qualify. Can you help define that better?
Yes, for considering the Board of Water Resources, once again, the Division of Drinking Water and the Division of Water Quality all have their own processes and procedures, and it maybe one day it'd be good to have all three of us on here. But that being said, we do require it to be an entity with, I think, at least 50% of the users living there year round. So it's not just, it's got to be an entity. We do private and public, so it's not just a public system. That's for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Our town is not within a water conservancy district. Can we qualify for these landscape efficiency incentives?
Yes. And I would maybe ask them to reach out to me at CandaceHossenjager@utah.gov. Depending on where they are at in the state, it would either be us maintaining the program, the Division of Water Resources, or there are conservancy districts that are managing the program for us. So even if you're within their area but not served by, they may be the entity managing the program. So if they want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to direct them to the right place.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, where do we find the list of locations that have adopted the water efficiency standards?
Yeah, so if you go to conservewater.utah.gov, and then there's an incentive and rebates tab, you can click on that. And then there's a list of those that that are eligible locations. I can put that in, or Eric, can you help me put that in chat, or Michael? I'll try to get some of this information in the chat for you guys.
Yeah, I'll get it in there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question, are municipal water systems eligible for the landscape incentive program themselves?
Yes, they are. As long as they've adopted water efficiency standards.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. Oh, yep. The next is, can you email us these slides and links? So we're recording this and we'll post it later. We'll share the slides as well, assuming that's all right with the presenter. So we'll get that out to everyone. So we're good there. Then Maddie asks, where can I find a list of eligible projects or requirements for eligible projects?
So I guess I would direct you to the website. The eligibility is defined specifically in the legislation. And so that's ultimately where you can see where eligibility is in the legislation. But the website does include a list of specific types of projects that are eligible.
Thank you. Next question, could you tell us a little bit more about what a favorable rate may be for those looking at the loan?
Sure, trying to get off mute. You know, it really depends on the project and the board that's doing it. Most of the time in my board, at the Board of Water Resources, I've seen sub, 3.5% most of the times, depending on the project once again. Yeah, so I would just reach out to the different boards. You can also go to waterfunding.utah.gov. That has a list of all of the different programs and all the different boards that you can reach out to.
Great. Are there any types of projects that you're hoping to see submitted?
We're really trying to capture any water-related projects that you envision needing state funding of some sort, either loan or grant, in the next 20 years. That's what we're trying to capture. So I've had a number of people say, well, we're not really sure if we're going to need funding on this or not. If you have the time, and really the only cost of putting it in is the time it takes, and then that provides us with more information for planning and helps you to be eligible down the road if you decide that you do need that funding. So hopefully that's what you can provide us.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question, do projects related to dam safety need to be included on this list, or will the current prioritized list for dam safety be retained?
That is a super question. Right now, the dam safety list, as it's currently prioritized and done, is how dam safety will be going forward into the future. So it is not a part of this process. If in the future the legislature just gives us all this money and we're super excited about it, we may roll it in later, but at this point, it is not included in the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
The only thing I would add to that is if you have a separate dam related project that is not associated with dam safety, you could submit that as a project for consideration.
Good point.
Our next question, so this funding and portal, could that include something like master plans and impact fee facilities plans, or is that something separate?
It can include planning documents. So each of the agencies, excuse me, have slightly different rules on how they we'll deal with that and prioritize that, but the legislation does specifically identify that planning can be included.
Yeah. Would a water conservancy district project for a reservoir be eligible?
Think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's easy enough. Perfect. Let's see here. This is a longer question. So slightly different track. We've learned that about 10% of total water use is lost to poorly designed or poorly installed residential irrigation systems. In response, I believe we're talking about Ivans has developed their own residential irrigation standards, but they cannot tie it to a C of O inspection. That in combination with no licensing requirement for landscape contractors or yard maintenance companies who determine the actual use in many cases leave a huge window of opportunity for water savings unused. What will it take to get the legislature to look at some conservation measures like these?
I was gonna say, call your legislature. I think the person sends out a really good point of there are definite gaps in how we design and construct our homes and commercial buildings. So I think any sort of requirements to have those type of things done would be important. Keith, anything to add?
No, well stated.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question, how are we defining raw water versus drinking water? Our SSD draws from a well and are looking at replacing it eventually.
So if this is a drinking water well that discharges directly into your system, we would connect that to drinking water. Raw water would be more coming out of a reservoir, being conveyed in a pipeline or a canal before it is treated and appropriate for culinary standards. So a well specifically would be drinking water.
Perfect, thank you. Our last question in Q&A, and then I'll go through the chat. Are municipal culinary water tanks or replacements and upgrades an eligible project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Pat Campbell, I see you have your hand raised. We're just taking questions through Q&A and chat, so if you can enter it in one of those spots, that would be excellent. And then going through, I think we had a question, from someone. They are also an HOA president for one of the cabin communities in Weber Canyon in Summit County. They don't have their own water system and they're not connected to a municipality. It's mostly a seasonal community. Would they be eligible for any of these funds to upgrade their antiquated water systems?
I think it did say we have our own water system. I think you said they don't, but it says they have their own water.
Oh, sorry.
System.
Yeah, we have their own water system, not connected to a municipality. Pardon me, I might have misspoken.
And if they qualify as a public water system, they would be eligible.
Okay.
Under
Perfect. All right.
I think we answered Maddie Brown's question on place for eligible funding. Todd Freeman asked what types of projects are more likely to be funded.
I think we chatted about that.
Yeah. Anything else you would add on that, Candace? Work in progress, right?
It is.
Again, I would probably refer people to the legislation. There are some specific items that are included there that will need to be considered as funding is prioritized. But that's the process we're working through.
Excellent. We have another, how far ahead should we look when you're submitting projects? I think you mentioned 20 years earlier.
Yeah, we've been asked to look at the next 20 years. We know a lot of plans don't go out that far, but that's ideally the window that we're trying to get our arms around.
And if
Excellent.
20 years seems like too far for you to reach. Do what's in your realm. Like if you're like, I know what I need to do within the next year or the next 5 years, then do that. And we can keep building on this list as we go.
Mhm. And then I think we spoke to this a little bit in the context of a different question, but will a project that is in process but not completed for a year, could that be included?
Candace answered that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
my understanding is most of the boards, and my board in particular, do require that they have at least authorization before construction starts.
All right. Well, that is easy enough. Thank you so much. Well, it looks like we've answered all of the questions. We'll hang out just for a moment to see if anything else pops up. In the meantime, I just want to say a huge thanks to Keith and Candace and all of the folks helping with this project. A couple points for ULCT. We'll be having LPC on May 21st. I believe that is going to be all online. Every community, it's a public meeting, so everyone's welcome to come. All communities should have 3 voting members, or 4 if you also have a league board member. So please make sure you're participating in that in interim so we can keep you updated on all of the policy conversations we're having ahead of the next legislative session. Additionally, the housing strategic plan groups are starting to meet. If that's something you're interested in for the state housing plan, let us know and we'll make sure we keep you in the loop. And if there's, it doesn't look like there's more questions. So with that, Keith, Candace, thank you both so much. And oh, here we go. We got one coming in on the buzzer. If a project isn't submitted this round, does that mean it's off the table for funding in the next 20 years? Or like what, I guess kind of what is the timeline for, it doesn't have to be in this year, but what is the cycle for consideration?
So, the devious part of me wants to tell you, no, you got to get it in now, because I really want to get the best list we possibly can. But the reality is that we understand this is a first, I don't know if we call it first draft, but this is a first cut at trying to gather this information. And we understand that it will change over time. And so you will have the opportunity down the line to update, provide additional information. But please get the best information you can.
I would say
Excellent.
add to that, if you need a project funded, even looking for a loan fund, if you've always gone to the Division of Drinking Water, Board of Water Resources, and you need a project funded next fall, you should have your project on the list. I wouldn't wait till next round because this process is going to change over. So if you're not sure about a project 5-10 years down the road, there's time to probably get your project on the list. But if you need funding or might need funding, I like how Keith phrased that. It's better to have it on the list now than wait.
And then we had another one pop in the Q&A. How does CIB funding fit into this?
It's a good question. So originally they were part of this. And then as we went through the integration of existing funds, that was one of the recommendations, that their funds shouldn't be tied to this process and they shouldn't technically be a relevant agency. They still have representation on the Water Development Coordinating Council, but at this point, they are not a part of this process. So the CIB process will continue to be the CIB process. I would say that in all the conversations I have had with them, they are hurting for money as well. So there is a concern that there may not be as much water money there. They're always asking us, do you guys have any funds available for this water project? Because we can't fund it. So just consider that as you're thinking through that.
Perfect, thank you. All right, last call for questions. If not, we will wrap this up. All right, Keith and Candace, I think this is the last time I'm going to thank you, at least on the webinar. Oh my goodness. All right, this is the last question from Burke Sorensen. Oh, and Margie. Okay, 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. or if you have a question, you can get it in before we wrap it up again. We'll consider it. So we have, I may have missed this issue, but are there funds available for secondary water?
The
Yes.
answer is yes. That's part of the
All
list.
right. And then the next question is, could CIB be a match for these funds?
It's a good question. It depends once again on the board. Typically at the Board of Water Resources, we have a requirement of at least 15% that's not grant funded. So we still require them to people have skin in the game as far as the project, but I know that is different for drinking water.
All right, excellent. Perfect. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. The slide, we're going to record this and we'll share that. We'll share the slides, and then contact information for Keith and Candace is, I think, available in both of those. So if you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to them. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.